What is up, everybody? I'm NoLucksGiven here with some Pokedraft content, and what I wanted to do today is do a little run through of a recent local draft that I did. Now, one of my thoughts going into this draft season, I've done these talks with David where we're analyzing the draft picks from the top competitive pod, and I feel like I've gained a lot of information from those, and I really wanted to put that to use, so that's what we're going to be looking at specifically. I am going to emulate his Season 6 team. Now, I'm not going to get any but one of the same Pokemon here. We both drafted Swampert, so that's going to be our only overlap. What I am going to be focusing on this draft is two things. One, drafting for teams, not just drafting the best Pokemon, but making sure that I draft Pokemon that are all doing the same thing so that I can combine those and use those together to get the best times on specific things should they come up. But more specifically, number two, I'm going to be looking at drafting the same type combinations that I've seen David draft in the past. Obviously, first and foremost, that is a Dark/Ghost team for Alolan Raichu, and then that is a Flying/Psychic team for your Machamp coverage. After that, though, David very highly tends to favor Fire-type Pokemon first and foremost, then Water and Electric types. So those three types are going to be the ones that we focus on, in addition to just the tried and true Pokedraft ones. But after that, a Fire team, an Electric team, and a Water team, and then we'll see what else happens after that. There is one other thing that I'm going to be doing this draft, and it does line up pretty well with what I've already said. Basically, I have to take Zapdos. I don't have to take it first pick, but I have to take it. I ranked it, I think, 9th in the Pokedraft power rankings for July that I did with Game Press, and I have to put my money where my mouth is. I think Zapdos is super, super strong, definitely underrated, a super powerful Pokemon, but I kind of got pressured into doing this draft by people saying, hey, NoLucks, we're doing a draft, you want to come show us how Zapdos is as good as you say it is? So I will be taking Zapdos, but first and foremost, I'm going to be taking Mewtwo Classic form. So that's Mewtwo just with the Shadow Ball and Psychic movesets, as well as Focus Blast and Hyper Beam, I suppose. But Moltres was already taken, so Mewtwo Classic is an obvious second pick after that. This league is not going to be doing any funky rules with Machamp and Alolan Raichu. They just count as normal bosses. So, Mewtwo Classic is the best Mewtwo. And by that, I mean, obviously, he's better than Elemental and Armored Mewtwo, but I also mean that he's better than Honchkrow and Alakazam, things that I've called Mewtwo's because of how they tend to mimic what Mewtwo can do, which is handle the two best bosses in the game just like that. Don't really have to say too much about Mewtwo. It's pretty obvious that it's good. You know, we see the data backing that up. The average draft pick, it does wind up going second, and that's even with those weird rules kind of holding it back a little bit. So Mewtwo Classic, it's a classic pick. I've picked it in almost all of my Pokedrafts, and I consider it my spirit Pokemon because the game loves to give me high IV Mewtwo as well. So I don't really know what's going to happen in these next picks. We see some pretty straightforward things other than the Elemental Mewtwo pick there. Honchkrow and Alakazam, I mentioned, are mini Mewtwo's. So reasonable start, Shocking Shinx with the Wheel, Gengar, Alakazam. But it's going to be a while till these picks get back to me. I don't really have a great idea of what I'd like to get back. If something big was still on the board, like a Gengar or an Alakazam, I think there's a chance that I would have taken either of those. or Honchkrow, Groudon, Kyogre, Giratina, you know, anything first pickable comes back to me other than Roserade, Elemental, Mewtwo, and Rayquaza. I was going to pick those things up because they are really strong. What I am happy to do here is take Zapdos, and it is a pretty big reach, I'll admit, but you know what? We've seen people pick up things like Executor around here. We've seen people pick up things like Metagross. And Zapdos, even though it doesn't have a boosted fast move, yes, believe me, check the numbers, it is still just as good as some of those tertiary or, you know, maybe fourth place-ish Machamp counters in its DPS and then also its TDO for being a flying type. It's pretty good. So I really like Zapdos, and from that perspective, but why I think Zapdos is so good and why it's such a sleeper pick and why I had to join this draft and why I'm making this video, and you know, or you know, it's bad. Leave it to me. I'll pick it. You know, I don't need to maybe sing its praise too fondly, but that second type, that electric type that it also gets, in addition to being such a good psychic type counter or fighting type counter, it's like effectively a psychic type Pokemon. I think that it is just so good, and I'm happy to pick it up every time. Now, did I need to pick it up here? I'm not sure. Is Beta going to take it? Beta is the wheel here. I don't think so, but I really don't want to chance it, so I lock in Zapdos. Then the pick comes back to me right away with Metagross and Weavile, and the fact that Beta took Metagross makes me feel very confident in my decision, because Zapdos and Metagross are at about the same playing field. Maybe Beta won't be wise to it, but, you know, that's not a chance worth taking. I lock in the Zapdos. They pick something that I feel is worse than Zapdos, though for some reason everyone disagrees. And then the pick is back to me. So I take Swampert here. Swampert, with its new Community Day move, does wind up in about 22nd place, and I think this is a great time to be able to pick it up here, and there's not really much more to say about that. I think that I can rival some Kyogre runs, potentially. I'll want to grab some other Water-type Pokemon, though, that may or may not slow me down. Like I said, too, Swampert is the only thing that David also drafted, so it's kind of an homage to him here. Obviously, he was able to pick it up 5th. I've got to take it 3rd now, because Swampert is a lot more powerful with that Community Day move locked in place. But yeah, we're going to be building a water team, an electric team, and a fire team. So now is when I really have to start to focus on grabbing some fire type Pokemon. So that is really all that I care about. The Raikou was off the table, and it always surprises me that you'll see in a lot of pods Raikou gets drafted before Zapdos. Zapdos is better, people. I know it's a worse electric type, but Zapdos is really, really strong. I did advocate in the article, if you can, picking up both Zapdos and Raikou will then allow you to just win the electric type and then also have a start for both of those other teams. Obviously, I'm pretty happy with Mewtwo as well. Then we get Executor, and that's exactly where it should be, behind Zapdos. So that is fine. And some other things get taken. Heatran getting taken by Shocking Shinx. Again, drafting a lot of Pokemon that I'm interested in, but on the other side of the pod. I can't be too mad because I got Swampert, but I could have drafted Heatran instead of Swampert, and that is potentially a mistake, in all sincerity. So I don't love the Mamoswine pick, as you know, I don't love that Pokemon, but I do think that I could have taken the Heatran, just lock in the easy fire team, and then a focus on the water types later. Maybe I could have gotten Gyarados or something, but water is a little bit more slim picking, We are going to see Entei. I would have taken that too. And I think we see Charizard as well right before my pick. So there is not much here for me. I'm going to take Houndoom. And Houndoom isn't really a fire type, but it's there. And I'm thinking, you know what? Houndoom will hopefully be my third fire type Pokemon. I'm going to try to pick up Flareon after this wheel. And Houndoom, basically I want to pick up Houndoom and Flareon. And I'm looking at Beta's team, and I think that there's a bigger chance that he's going to want the Houndoom. He has Weavile, which needs some help, and he has Moltres. So he really doesn't need another fire-type Pokemon, but he very well could want a Dark-type. So Houndoom could be off the table, but Flareon's going to be safe. So he winds up taking Electivire and Tangrowth, and if he had taken Flareon in some crazy scenario, I actually left this pick with some of our moderators, and I just said, okay, after Beta's pick, I definitely want Flareon. If Flareon is somehow off the table, I want Electivire. But I think he might pick Electivire, so I was like, oh shit, if he takes both of those, I guess I'll take Typhlosion. And I was willing to commit to a Typhlosion pick there, but luckily he just takes Electivire. I was pretty sure Flareon was safe, so I am able to get Flareon there, and that's even a little bit of a steal for me, which is nice. After no, I guess for the most part I've been doing okay. Just the Zapdos is a reach so far, but I think history will catch up with that one. So I take Flareon and I start building my fire team, and I am super happy with that one. So what do I want to build next? Well, I probably want to complete the electric team. I'm feeling good about my Machamp counters. I am feeling good about my Alolan Raichu counters, and I'm feeling fine so far about my fire types. I'll probably want to pick up another fire type eventually, but we'll see. So something like Sharpedo is definitely on the table for me. And then we see Deoxys Attack, which I think also could have been one of those Deoxys, as down with TTP takes both of those. I think either of those Deoxys, though, could have added onto my team. And those were definitely things that I was considering. Banette, I also think that I might have been happy to take, though not that soon. That was intentional to not take Banette there, but I am going to go with Magnezone, and I'm pretty happy with Magnezone. It's about the same level as Zapdos, except you are just using it for electric type damage, but we've got them both at the same place on Game Press's Attackers tier list, so I'm feeling pretty good about a Magnezone pick there. I will mention, I don't mind getting a few more bulkier Pokemon that just carry me a little bit as far as allowing me to not have to dodge as much, because I'm not the best, as far as Pokedraft. I'm a little rusty, for sure. We'll say that. So I grabbed Magnezone specifically, again, because Beta just got that Electivire. If I want to grab another fire type as well, well then I can grab the Electivire now that, the electric type now that Beta might care about, and then after the wheel, I'll pick up another fire type. So I do that same trick twice in this draft, where I get a fire type a little bit later than I want. But then, before I pick the fire type, which would have been Typhlosion, I start thinking, Typhlosion's still on the table, Magmortar's still on the table. Are both of these Pokemon going to get picked before my next pick? And I'm on the end, so I really have to be careful about this decision. If both of those get picked, am I okay taking Arcanine? No, I'm not really, especially because I don't have a Legacy Arcanine. but I'm willing to take the risk that at least one of these two fire Pokemon wheels back around to me. So instead, I decide to take Rhydon. So with my 4 remaining picks, I'm kind of just charting the course here, and I realize I really do want one more fire type, that's for sure. I would potentially like one more dark type Pokemon to improve my Alolan Raichu times, and then I want 2 more good or reasonably okay water type Pokemon. There's a lot of water types on the board already, and I have Typhlosion or Magmortar to pick between. Worst case scenario, I have Arcanine. I don't think it's worth taking any of the ghost type Pokemon just yet to round out that team. So I start to think outside of the box a little bit, and I realize that Rhydon typically gets picked up around now in Pokedrafts. I don't need to pick up Rhydon here, but I do it. And when I do it, I just say, F you, Jolteon, in the chat. I'm picking Rhydon. And this is just an insurance pick, okay? Now I'll be able to deal with Rhydon should that come up. The other thing that this allows me to do is potentially look at clear Alolan Raichu times. Now, I don't know exactly how that works out when I also have Shadow Ball Mewtwo. I don't know what will be the best combination of Pokemon. Like, Shadow Ball Mewtwo might still be better than Rhydon, even while clear boosted. But I decide that this is a pick worth making just in case we get some Jolteon or some other weird bosses, and I can afford, with my last 4 picks, to probably then just focus on 2 water types and a fire type, or potentially just a water type and a fire type. One other thing that is going through the back of my mind in this draft is we're about to get Crabhammer released into the game. We know we're about to get Crabhammer. We don't know how good Crabhammer is. So Crawdaunt gets picked up there by Down with TTP, and that was definitely on my radar a little bit as well. Crawdaunt with Crabhammer is a little bit of a hedge, and I say, you know what? Maybe I've got to pick up Kingler with Crabhammer. But nobody else really seems to be onto it. The fact that Crawdaunt gets picked first means I think that none of these players were really just thinking about Crabhammer. And it's a pretty obscure thing to think about. You got to be pretty involved, and it's also a gamble. We had no idea how good Crabhammer was going to be. So I don't take it either. I take Floatzel. And I went back and forth on this Kingler versus Floatzel. It was a gamble, and I think my team is already so good that just making the safe choice here is actually the smartest thing to do. I've talked a little bit about this in, some of my streams where I'm playing a card game, and even in one of my Game Press articles where I talk about analyzing chance in PvP. And this is really a circumstance where you have to analyze chance. The way that I look at it here is things are already going so well, just make the safe choice and ride the wave to secure your decision. I think if your draft had gone off the handle a little bit, then you could start to pick up some more speculative picks like Kingler, and our league also allowed people to pick up Azelf, as you can see, which was kind of a weird thing. That was also something on my mind going into the season, but I thought it would wheel around for a little while. So I would have picked up Azelf right here instead of this Magnezone, just because people weren't really thinking about it. Obviously, Azelf is better than Espeon. Both of them went to the same player, but Azelf is better than Espeon, so some silly things did definitely happen in this draft. But you can also, in our league, draft things like Giratina, or, I don't know, maybe Regigigas, but Shaman, and kind of leave it up a little bit more to chance. I think doing something like that when you're behind makes a lot of sense. But because I was already feeling so good about this draft, I take Floatzel. Okay, it's a little bit of a coward's way out, but that's what I'm thinking. Also, for some reason, Arcanine went before Magmortar. Same thing, I'm going to do that fire trick with Beta. He already got the Moltres, so I'm pretty sure he's not going to grab Moltres here. Nope, he grabs Amistar and Donphan, and then allows me to pick up the Magmortar. So, happy about that one. And now, the last thing that I'm thinking is, let's do this draft as quickly as possible. That was part of the reason that I had left some of my picks with moderators. I was like, if we can get this draft done super quickly, the higher the chances are that I get Kingler and nobody else thinks about it. So that's what happens here at the end of the pod. I get Kingler, 99th pick, a huge steal compared to Season 7 average draft picks, but this was done a little bit before that. Yeah, you see some silly things come in here as well, like we have... Oh yeah, Darkrai here. So that would have also been a really great 10th pick that I was kind of leaving it up to chance. I was thinking, okay, if I don't get Kingler, I'll take Darkrai. As much as I just said that, I think that my Dark team is already good enough, and Driftblim, I believe, was off the table as well. Is that true? Oh, no, Driftblim was still there. Okay, so... I did have the option of Driftblim, but Jolteon did get taken before me. That was probably about the only other thing that I was thinking about, so that's what I go with. All in all, a pretty straightforward draft where I just try to mimic David to the best of my abilities. I have the second highest total ADP if you are looking at the top 5 leagues, which I think that's the most reasonable metric to look at. Overall, I've still drafted some really powerful Pokemon, and I've drafted some really synergistic Pokemon. So I think when you factor in both of those things, it means that I did a pretty decent job with the draft. Obviously, we'll have to see. And some of these picks might wind up not helping me at all with, like, that Rhydon pick that I also had in there. As far as how my team stacks up to David, I think it does pretty well. First off, I've got Rhydon and he's got Omastar. That is the only place where we really deviate as far as teams go. Basically, we're both looking at perspective bosses there. He's looking at Scyther, and I'm looking at Jolteon. From that perspective, I think he might have the edge. I think Scyther has just been more frequent as a Pokedraft boss than Jolteon has been. Though Jolteon we do also see show up with some of those Ho-Oh or Adventure Week, whatever you want to call them, bosses. That hasn't happened in a while, but it's still potentially on the table enough to put the fear of Jolteon in me. For Machamp coverage, I am a winner. I've got Mewtwo and Zapdos, whereas David has Honchkrow and Lugia, and those teams are pretty close in terms of TDO maybe, but I think that I just have a lot more DPS in both of my picks, and I can certainly get it done with those 2 picks, so I'm going to wind up having a much better time than David on that front. On dark types, though, I think is where David might have me. David's Honchkrow over Mewtwo is a little bit better in that it will get the fast move boosted as well, but they're about on the same playing field, with Mewtwo maybe being slightly stronger. But then the fact that David has 2 additional picks to back that up, I took Houndoom so that I wouldn't have to spend 2 total picks on this team. However, Banette and Driftblim, I think, put David out slightly ahead of me, and so he'll get the win in that category. David will also get the win in the fire category. Despite me having 2.5 fire types, David really prioritized fire during his season with his 2nd and 3rd pick, and made it known that he was going to win any fire type DPS. So I really do think that David won in that scenario. Even though I have more Pokemon than him, I have much weaker Pokemon, especially the Houndoom. whereas I'm just going to be trying to get those fire times done. Water types, though, obviously I am killing him in that his best Pokemon is Swampert, my best Pokemon is Swampert, now with Hydro Cannon, which he wasn't even able to make use of throughout most of his season. I also have Floatzel and Kingler, which are just insane. The Floatzel's maybe not insane. It's pretty bad, actually. But Kingler alongside Swampert, I felt like I wanted a little bit more TDO to back that up, which I didn't bring up, but that was one of the other reasons that I wanted to pick that Buizel, or Floatzel. I keep calling it Buizel. The other reason I wanted to take that Floatzel over the Kingler was just to make sure that I had the overall TDO and secure that position there. Lastly, looking at electric types, I think this is the closest that David and I have as far as the competition there. David has Electivire plus Luxray, which are a better and a worse DPS than my Zapdos and Magnezone. However, Zapdos and Magnezone both have higher TDO than Electivire, and I think that's going to just allow me to have a really, really good electric team. So overall, how'd I do? I'm feeling pretty good. I feel like I did David proud, and yeah, wound up with a really good team here that I'm happy with. I'm not sure how much coverage I'm going to do on it as the season progresses, but obviously I've got some runs to submit and some drafting to do. So as the season progresses, stay tuned to the channel, subscribe, leave a like if you enjoyed this content, and I might do some further deep diving into my experience with Zapdos in Pokedraft, my experience copying David's draft team. I do just think it's really good, and that is why I copied it. You know, maybe I've let him seep into my mind too much and corrupt me, but I think that a draft in this style, either of these two drafts, is really where you want to be, and has allowed him to put up consistently really good results throughout the seasons of Pokedraft. The guy has stayed on top for so long for a reason, so I wanted to see if I could get some of those winnings for myself. For now, that's going to be it for me, guys. Again, subscribe to stay tuned to see more in the future. I'm NoLucksGiven. Peace!